What is up, YouTube? Welcome back. Aeneas here, and we got another one of the top 5 new brews for MTG Bro, the Brothers War coming up in just a little over a week now, on the 15th. And I'm kind of cheating because I'm gonna put two decks in this one because they're a little bit similar. But the main one is this one, the DIMIR QUANDRY deck. So this is kind of your classic DIMIR control list. We've got things like counter spells here with Disdainful Stroke, Make Disappear, Negate, and one Urtai Scorn. And then we also have like the removal suite, Cut Down, the new card Go for the Throat, which I think is going to be a really sweet 2-mana removal. We have one March of Wretched Sorrow to get us some life gain. And of course, we have to have some board wipes. So we have Drag to the Bottom here, which is kind of the best board wipe in black right now. And then to go along with that, we have some new cards. The Dreams of Steel and Oil. This is a discard spell that's kind of like Divest. So when you cast it, you can look at your opponent's hand. Then you may select an artifact or a creature spell from their hand and put it into their graveyard. Oh, sorry. Choose an artifact or creature card from their hand. Then choose an artifact or creature card from their graveyard. So actually you do both, and then you exile the chosen cards. So yeah, I thought it was either or, but it's actually both, so that's pretty even sweeter than I thought. So maybe you can cast this on, if you drew it like later in the game, you cast it on like turn 3 or something. They have an underdog sitting in their graveyard. You snag their Shieldred out of their hand, and you exile the underdog. That's like the perfect scenario. They both get exiled, and you don't have to deal with it anymore. But even if you just cast this on turn 1, and you hit their underdog on turn 1, it exiles, so they don't get it back. So it's just gone forever. So pretty neat way to get rid of the annoying creatures in Standard. There's a lot of creatures in Standard because right now creatures are just really good. Of course there are spells and other stuff like that, so you do have to be a little bit careful, but I think going forward it seems like there's also a lot of good artifacts that are coming up. So I think having creatures or artifacts makes it pretty safe that you're going to hit something in their hand with this. So yeah, I like it in the deck. I think it makes sense. Worst case scenario, you can discard it later if you think it's going to not work out for you. All right, and so the main cards, the main win cons of the deck, so to speak, are first off this one, Teferi Temporal Pilgrim. It's a 5-mana Planeswalker with 4 starting loyalty. If we zoom in a little bit, maybe you can see it better. So whenever you draw a card, put a loyalty counter on Teferi Temporal Pilgrim. So that's pretty sweet. And you can do 0 to draw a card. -2 creates a 2/2 creature that says it has vigilance, and whenever you draw a card, put a +1/+1 counter on this creature. So not only Teferi grows with drawing cards, but the creatures he makes also draws with drawing cards. So that's pretty sweet. And he can also draw cards, so he can make his own creatures bigger, etc., etc. And then the -12 does something crazy, but it's not really that good, and you're almost never going to get to -12. So that doesn't matter. Just know that it doesn't really win you the game. It destroys a bunch of the opponent's stuff. Yeah, I guess we can read it, but it's not very good. So target opponent chooses a permanent they control, returns it to their hand, then they shuffle each non-land permanent they control into their library. So basically they kind of reset their board. Not that great for an ultimate of a Planeswalker. Alright, so you're mainly you're going to win with the tokens that you're creating off Teferi, and you're going to be making them bigger and bigger and bigger. So how do we make them bigger? Well, we have to draw cards. So either you can draw with Teferi himself, or we have 3 copies of Silver Scrutiny. So if you have one of the creatures down, and then you cast Silver Scrutiny for like X = 5, something like that, the creature is going to get +5/+5, and you're going to draw 5 cards, and your Teferi is going to get 5 loyalty. So, you know, you're going to be in a pretty sweet situation there. On top of that one, we also have Tainted Indulgence, which draws you 2 cards. So, same thing. It's going to buff your creatures. It's going to buff your Teferi, make it hard for them to kill it, that kind of stuff. And then we also have 1 copy of the Celestis. So that's a minor thing, but potentially that could be drawing you an extra card each turn, making your stuff grow. And of course, you have a draw phase in every turn, so you're always going to at least get 1 loyalty each turn and 1+1/+1 on your creature counters. Alright, so that's the main win con there. We also have these 2 painful quandaries in the deck, and this says whenever your opponent casts a spell, that player loses 5 life unless they discard a card. So, the drawbacks to Painful Quandary. What are the drawbacks? Well, it's a little bit expensive, and they could potentially remove it, right, with some removal spell. Well, the only really good removal for enchantments in the format right now is Invoke Despair. So, we need ways to stop Invoke Despair. How can we stop Invoke Despair? That's why we got Negates in the deck. That's why we got Make Disappears. So basically, you want to get your Quandary down while you can either have protection, or if you're playing an opponent that doesn't have black, you don't have to worry about it. Yeah, that kind of thing. So you want to keep this around so that basically they can't play any spells anymore. But what's the other downside to Painful Quandary? Well, they can discard cards in their hand. How can we get them to not be able to discard cards in their hand? Well, that's why we have the Dreams of Steel and Oil, so we can make them discard some of their artifacts and creature cards out of their hands. So it all kind of synergizes together. We start off early game, make them discard some of their stuff. They're going to be playing some of their stuff as well. Their hand's going to be getting smaller and smaller. They're going to want to cast their Invoke Despair to kind of refill their hand. We're going to counter it. Then we're going to drop down Painful Quandary and hopefully have another counterspell in hand, or we drop down to Teferi and start, you know, going to town, drawing cards, making some win cons, that kind of stuff. Yeah, etc. And since you can see their hand with the Dreams of Steel and Oil, you're going to be able to play around their cards a little bit easier in that sense. So, yeah, I think it seems like a pretty solid DIMIR deck. Teferi seems like a great win con. Painful Quandary, we'll have to see how it plays out. It's really, really strong if it sticks around. If it doesn't stick around, then you're going to be sad. So if you're able to get this down and protect it, like I just mentioned, then I think you're going to have a good time. So that's it for the core concept of the deck. I do have some special lands in here from the new set. So we have 1 Blast Zone. Basically, I just wanted another way to try to help clear the board, since all we have is drag to the bottom. This can also get rid of tokens and annoying things like Onical Anvil and stuff like that, so nice to have in there. And then Mishra's Foundry is kind of a man land that can attack in. So if you need an extra win con, or if you sweep the board and you have some open mana, you can attack in, something like that. So that's kind of the point of that one. But both of those are optional, not must-haves. Blaststone probably a little bit more useful in this deck, but yeah, cool new land cards that we can try out and see how they work out. So that's it for the DIMIR Quandary deck. Just real quick, like I mentioned, I want to share a second list. It's kind of similar. So this is an Esper control list. It has a lot of the similar concepts going on. We got Teferi, Temporal Pilgrim, as one of our planeswalkers. Wandering Emperor, Sorin are both very good planeswalkers, so we still got them in here. We have the Dreams of Steel and Oil. Again, getting rid of that underdog on turn 1 is pretty nice, or getting rid of Sheoldred on turn 3 and exiling the underdog. Both of those are very nice scenarios. Of course, in Esper we have Farewell, so we're already easy to exile a lot of stuff there. And the new card, Legions to Ash, is also an exile target non-land permanent. So that's super great. Gets rid of planeswalkers, artifacts, enchantments, whatever we want. So that's really sweet. Of course, Void Rend is still in the format, so we still got a couple copies of those. Both very nice exile not exile. This is destroy and this is exile. So that's kind of the key difference, I guess, for those. All right, and then we've got the Tainted Indulgence to draw and buff our Teferi. We've got the Invoke Despairs to destroy stuff and draw and buff our Teferi. So very similar concept idea. Basically just comes down to, do you want to be in DIMIR with more counter spells and the bigger draw, or do you want to be in the Esper with the more planeswalkers and more exile effects? But yeah, that's kind of it. You know, I love Control. I think most of us here on the channel love Control, so this is definitely something I'm going to be trying to make work in the first weeks of the new set. Let me know which one you think is better, DIMIR or Esper. What's your preferred Control deck of choice? And we'll have to see how they do on the ladder. See which ones stack up. But both pretty cool. Yeah. I'm hoping Painful Quandary can be good. It will just be so fun to like lock people out, where they basically are killing themselves because they're playing cards into it. So yeah, hope we get to do that. But anyway, that'll be it for this one. Look forward to the next two coming up, and we'll do an honorable mention / historic one as well, coming up as well. So until next time, see ya.